Hi guys, my name's Doug. Welcome to my messy garage. In today's video, we're going to continue working on the $100 abandoned four-wheeler project. And while we've got a whole bunch of parts that should allow us to get this thing running, I think that's going to be a separate video. What we're going to work on today is, well, I'm going to show you what I got, first off. And second of all, I'm going to work on doing some minor repairs to the front and back fenders. Starting off, the elephant in the room, the thing that we have been waiting for that will allow us to get this machine running, I hope at least, is the CDI box. This appears to be the right type of plugs, and hopefully it will work. It wasn't terribly expensive. Got it from Amazon, 27 bucks or something like that, I believe. Another item that I had identified that wasn't working quite right, headlight bulbs. And you wouldn't think headlight bulbs would be all that hard to find, but these actually were a little bit of a challenge to find. They look like the base of an 1157 light, except they've got this flange on it. I think you can see that. And these are in LED style, so they should be nice and bright. One of the headlight bulbs was working when I was playing around with the machine, but this should get us both of them working. As I'd said in the last video, when we were working on the carburetor, I wanted to replace the boots. So there is a new carburetor boot. And then this is the intake boot where it attaches to the engine block. I don't know that those are spectacular quality. They seem pretty cheap to me, but that's what we've got. Hopefully they will be better than what is on the bike. Here we've got 3 sets of brakes. Left, right, and rear. When I put the brake cables on 2 videos ago, the shiny new brake cables definitely worked fine, but there was no way that it was going to be able to grab the adjustment, so we'll go with these. Hopefully that'll put it out at the beginning of the adjuster instead of at the end. Another thing that I picked up, bag of hardware. What do we got in here? We've got a bunch of fuel lines and vent lines, plastics, another crispy carb boot. And it looks like there's some tools in there, all sorts of brackets. And that is a ground cable. What we've got here is essentially wrecking yards that take these units and strip them for parts will oftentimes strip down what useful components, motors, gearboxes, axles, that kind of thing. As they tear them apart, they tend to just throw them in a bucket. All the fasteners, all the bits and pieces just go in a bucket, and then they throw it in a bag, sell it for 20 bucks. Let me bring the back fenders over, set it up on the bench here. I think I'm going to try and do some plastic welding on that. I'll show you guys how I do that, and we'll see if we can make this thing a solid machine once again. This is the back fenders, and you can see we've got a bit of a crack here in the plastic. Over here we're missing some material. I don't know there's a whole lot we can do about that unless I find the remainder of the tab somewhere in the collection of stuff that we have. But this looks like it's had somebody trying to do some plastic welding on it at one time, but it doesn't appear that they did a very good job of it. What we've got here is a conventional 250 watt soldering gun. Nice, fairly heavy duty soldering gun, but you'll notice it's got a little different tip in it. This is the plastic welding tip. It's essentially a standard soldering tip that's been squashed flat at the end. It's a little lighter duty than the conventional soldering tip that came in the gun. What to do? Pull the trigger, heat it up. I don't know why the lights don't come on when I pull the trigger, but I can feel the gun is buzzing, so definitely we're getting some heat. I can smell the heat. And then we can kind of just stitch this together a little bit, smooth it out. Now, that's not going to work very well. It's a good first start. It'll hold things in alignment together so I can let go of it after it cools. but the first time we bump into something or there's any kind of pressure put on this, it's just going to let go again. See the smoke coming off of that tip as the plastic burns. And there we are. We are basically put back together. The trick to successful plastic welding is using a filler material. And given that this is a softer plastic, a red tie wrap is pretty well perfect welding rod. What we can do, I'm going to just hold some pressure on this. I'm going to give this a quick pass with the soldering gun. Work that crack closed. Continue on down the side here. Just kind of agitate it as we go. Work the ridges out and continue down the side of the machine. So that's the first pass. Now we take our welding rod. And we melt it into the base material. Using the heat from the soldering iron, work it down flat. A little bit of a low spot here. And we'll continue on down. Of course, you want to be doing this in a fairly well ventilated area because melting plastic kind of stinks. Looks like we've got some kind of saw cut here. Well, we're doing color match welding. Let's fill it in. And this looks like a hole that's already been plastic welded. Let's put a little more filler material in it. Now that we've got the cracks, the divots filled in here, we can go over it with some sandpaper, clean it up. It is not going to be nice and shiny smooth like brand new plastic. That is just the way this is going to be. But at least it's strong and it shouldn't crack on us anymore. At least the top. Now I'm going to flip it over and repeat on the underside. Here I have the back side of the crack. Cleaned up the plastic a little bit, take the worst of the grunge off of here. This is definitely a well-used machine. Now we need to fill in the back side of this crack repair. Again, filler material, heat the soldering iron up, and we work the heated tip into the plastic, trying to melt the crack closed on the back side. Then we take our filler material, we add it into the mix. Now it's not perfect, a little rough still. We can sand that down somewhat, but that should be strong enough that hitting a bump isn't going to make it pop open again. Let me go over this rear fender some more, see if I can find any more broken bits other than where this fender mounts, and I'll bring you back if I find anything worth fixing. Here's the front fenders. The top of the fuel tank fits in here. We've got a crack, comes down this corner. Over here on this side, we've got another crack. This piece seems a little distorted. It should be sitting parallel to how this sits, and you can see it's this one's kind of bent out a little bit. We might have to put a little bit of heat in here to tweak it back, and also we've got a crack here that we need to address. So let me get on those, and then we'll come back. There's one more little repair we need to do to the back fender, but I wanted to make sure everything was good on the fronts here before we did that. Got the outer layer done here. Could do with a little bit of a sanding, no big deal. But we've got this piece here that's a little bit warped, and I want to use the heat gun on it, and I figured probably wouldn't be a bad idea if I show you guys how I do that. Basically, we're going to put a little bit of heat in here and just bend it back the way it's supposed to be, and then let it cool. Hopefully it will somewhat stay in that position. And we're just going to take the heat gun and we're going to apply a little bit of heat. Doesn't take a whole lot. Work it just a little bit past so that the crack closes up. Normally there's no stress on the plastic. We don't want to get it too hot. We don't want to damage anything. And then we turn the heat off and we hold it in its proper position for a few minutes. Kind of let things cool off a little bit. Plastic is pretty warm. If I had the air hose handy, I could probably blow some cool air on there and it would help quite a bit. But we don't, so I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, that is basically cool, and while it doesn't necessarily line up perfect, just the way this fender is kind of sitting on the bench, it's kind of flopped over this way a little bit, so these two tabs don't line up perfectly. But I'm going to turn it around here and I'll do the plastic welding on it, and then we'll weld the inside and the inside of this crack, and I'll bring it back when all that's done. I've got the patches basically done. I'm going to take some sandpaper on the die grinder here and we'll see if we can clean this up just a little bit. I don't want to get too carried away. I don't really want to try and make a big sanded patch on the side of the fender here. Although this unit is a long ways from being new, there's no sense in making the whole thing rough. We're still a little bit proud of the base plastic. It's probably not a bad thing, but I'll try and clean it up a little bit more. Not perfect, but I'll call that good enough. Kind of hard to see, but there's a dull area where I've been sanding. We can take the heat gun, just apply a little bit of heat. And that gets rid of the sanding scratches, or kind of blends the sanding scratches in. You can still see the filler material I was using a little more pink than the base plastic, and therefore when I melted it in you can still see it. It's a lot better than having a crack though. Plastic welding is never going to be perfect. You're not going to make it look like a brand new piece of plastic without doing a whole lot more work than what I'm showing here. One last little thing that I want to show you. I'll grab the rear fender and we'll have to rebuild a tab. So we can see here we've got a mounting tab that attaches to the frame of the bike. Over here the tab is broken out. I do have a remnant of it. I don't know exactly how much of it or exactly how this fits in here. At least this is the only broken piece of red plastic I've found on the machine. So I'm kind of left to assume that it is in some way part of this. What I'm going to do is kind of figure out how to melt this into the tab so it becomes a usable mount. I got some more filler material and this piece of plastic, and we'll see if we can manufacture a tab out of all of this. Now, I don't know if this is going to work or not. We'll give it a try. So I flipped this little piece of plastic around about 6 different ways and found that it actually fits right like that. Let's heat up the soldering iron, we'll tack it in place, and then we'll continue on and see if we can build the rest of it. Now you notice when I'm doing the plastic weld, I kind of agitate the tip a little bit just so that it kind of stirs in and gives us the best heat penetration part. Pretty soon this is going to start burning my finger, so we'll just leave well enough alone. Okay, we can let go. Now we'll take and use some of these tie wraps to bridge across to give the remainder of this hole. A question could be raised, what else do you use for filling material aside from tie wraps? Well, tie wraps are a good fill candidate, but there are other materials that work well too. The kind of clear or semi-clear water tube that you use on a ice maker in a refrigerator, that works very well as filler material, especially if you're filling something that is a transparent or semi-transparent plastic, similar to a fuel tank. I did some repairs on the fuel tank on my 77 Alpine using water tube, and what you do is split it in half so it's kind of like a tie wrap. It seems to work pretty well. I gotta be honest, I'm just kind of going for cosmetics to round this out a little bit at this point. We're going to need to flip this over and build up the backside now. Here's the backside of our little repair. We've got a crack along there that we need to fill, and then we need to build up the backside of our filling material that we added to make this into a loop. That's it. That is a reasonable facsimile of the tab that was there. A little bit rough on the other side. I'm going to flip it back over and just put a little bit of heat on there and kind of flatten some of that down. But I'm pretty happy with that. Seems relatively strong, not flexing, even though it's still so hot I can barely hang on to it. I'm going to call that good enough. I think this is where we're going to end this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please remember to like and subscribe. Click that little bell icon if you want to get notified when I put more stuff up. And thanks a lot for watching. We'll catch you in the next mess.